If you want success, you gotta put in work. I've killed 3 men.
So I remember when I started in property over a year ago, I was actually really scared. I was very intimidated by going into this new industry that I had little to no experience in. Up until that point, I'd worked in retail, hospitality, journalism, writing, content writing, fundraising and sales. There was nothing that was really like property that I'd done up until that point. So as a fresh start, I had no experience. I could pretty much go into this experience with open expectation and an open mind. So when you first join, you're getting used to the management bureaucracies, the new faces, you're getting used to your desk, the morning meetings where most people say a lot of jargon and gibberish, which you have no idea what it means yet. Everyone tells you that this is normal for every person that is new, but when you first join, it's so overwhelming. There's so much to take in and memorize at one point. And moving on from this experience, for almost a year now, I've been working in a new role within the same company as a property inspector, and it's unlike anything I've ever done, and it's definitely a good thing. It's been very exciting for me. And I was just thinking this as well, it's actually really funny because I've spent most of my adult life working in teams and with people, and now I've just gone to a job which is pretty much me by myself. I'm like my own team member, and it's kind of nice, and I think that says a lot about me as a person, is that I'd rather work with myself than other people. It's funny, I actually kind of like it. And a perfectionist I am, it's nice to work in a job which rewards an attention to detail, so that's actually quite good. So I have to dictate and rigorously detail the condition and cleanliness of a property using a little device like this. Yeah, it kind of makes me feel like a detective, not gonna lie.
Diane, 11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks. It's 5 miles south of the Canadian border, 12 miles west of the state line. I've never seen so many trees in my life.
And it's fun. I go all across London. I go to places which I'm not too familiar with, and then over time I can obviously learn the ins and outs of it. And it's weird. It's such a cool way to see the hustle and bustle of a city that you've grown up in. I meet quite a few people on a day-to-day basis, and the job has its fair share of challenges, but it keeps me on my toes, and I can say for the time being that I'm professionally committed, at least for the time being. Obviously in today's climate, a lot of things can change really fast, but that just begs the question, why do people stop and start so often nowadays? In a study that looked at most of the modern workers in the world at the moment, it was found that the average worker stays in a role for an average of 4.5 years. And granted, that might seem like a lot of time to commit to something, but if you think about it, our grandparents, our parents spent decades in a role without any hesitation, without batting an eyelid, and it's crazy that whole expectation is just flipped on its head now. And I think what that comes down to nowadays is the overabundance of options. We have a crazy amount of options when it comes to just about everything. If you're at the shop, there is a ridiculous amount of food. There isn't just your normal fruit and veg and meat that you used to have back in the day. Now it's protein bars, protein shakes, chocolate bars, and I'm just naming all the stuff that I like to eat on a regular basis. But it's crazy, we're completely flooded with all these different ways to satisfy ourselves. And the same thing is true on Netflix. Whenever you're scrolling through Netflix, it's often one of the hardest things to do is decide on watching something, because I think in the back of your head, you're consciously aware that time is also a currency. So you're investing your time into your enjoyment of something. And it's just, we never used to have this problem. And it just means that we are so indecisive when it comes down to things nowadays. So there's something that I've come up with, and this is a little thing I've created called the happiness formula. Now, the world we live in can be a very demanding place. This is a world where junior Goldman Sachs bankers are begging to have their 95-hour work weeks drop down to 80, which is kind of messed up if you think about it. And this may come down to the part of me which is a little bit lazy or under ambitious, but no amount of money would ever persuade me to work that hard that I'd have to forego the things that are fundamentally, to me, the foundations for having healthy relationships and being able to look after myself just so I can have a bit more money in the bank. None of the essential components of having a good life can come from just a work mindset. It's just, they can't mutually exist. And this is just a toxic byproduct of hustle culture. Like, everyone wants to have the fancy car on the drive and the big house and etc. Just all these things to just materially show off to people. Anyway, going back to the actual point of the formula, I believe that fundamentally your enjoyment and fulfillment in something comes down to two factors. And that is the investment of your personal time and your exposure to stress in that activity. Your personal time is obvious, but your exposure to stress can obviously affect your ability to cope with the demands of the job. And this is where things like burnout become quite common. But this is going to the other side of things where you might work less hours. So therefore, your exposure to that type of stress is significantly reduced. This means you've got more energy to put effort into your relationships, your health, all these essential tenets for having a good, decent life. Granted, you might be receiving less money, but the thing is that if you're not around to spend this money, there's no point. You might as well have a long, healthy life. And sometimes that's just the nature of reinvention. But like I said, this is a very simplistic view of how to reduce stress. Sometimes you can't just cut and run your job. And this moves us on to the next point, and this is about play. So I'm going to bring up a really awesome guy, and this is Ali Abdaal, and this is someone that I really like. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because he wrote a book and released it this year called Feel Good Productivity, which is something that I might cover at some point. It's a really decent book. And he talks about the ways in which we can enhance our output and energy just by doing these small little everyday things in our lives. And that's what we all want. We've all got 24 hours in a day. Why not just try and squeeze as much as we can out of it? And the thing is with Ali, he's not just an author, he's a podcast host. He has his own YouTube channel. He does lots of talks and has his own business. He's got a finger in every single pie. So it does make sense that someone like him has a unique system which helps him maximize his output. Because it's very easy to ignore a couple of these factors, and then before you know it, you're spiraling into a direction you have little control over. And a question that he asks quite frequently is, how can I make this fun? And it's such a simple question, but it just gives you the ability just to essentially gamify everything. Like, I love games. I'm a massive gamer. The funniest thing about a game is because it brings certain things out of yourself that you didn't realize were actually there. Like your competitive side and seeing if you can make things fun. This has had such an impact on me recently that I even added his little screensaver onto my phone with this phrase. So every time I addictively check my phone, it reminds me, hey, whatever I'm doing, I can be a little bit more engaged. I can have a little bit more fun. I can try and add a little bit of something cool, a little bit of flavour to what I'm doing. Relating this to myself, I always like to have fun at work. I always like to talk to the people in my office, and when I go to other offices to pick up keys for the properties that I visit, I always like to crack jokes. And when I'm actually doing my job and inspecting properties, I like to have a bit of fun describing things. And say, for instance, there's a funny picture of a dog, I like to go to a lot of description about the dog and stuff. Maybe it's a bit over the top, but it just makes me smile. It gives me that extra boost, especially when you need it. And sometimes life can be a bit tedious. And yeah, it just gives everything a little bit of extra spice. Anyway, guys, that is it. If you like this, comment, like, and subscribe. And I'm sure I'll see you in the next video. You take care. Goodbye.